and welcome to Flair's Ultimate Career Panel, a discussion with some of the women we featured in our amazing How I Made It project. I'm Stacey Lee Kong. Before we get started, I want to let everyone know that we will be taking viewer questions later on in the broadcast, so leave yours in the comments. One lucky commenter will win an hour of mentorship with one of the women we featured in How I Made It. Now, if you don't know what How I Made It is, which you definitely should, it's this amazing project. We're really proud of it. We featured brutally honest, been there, done that career advice from over 100 really successful Canadian millennials. We have artists, entrepreneurs, celebs like Riverdale's Haley Law. We even have a physician/astronaut. And 3 of those women are here with me today. Please meet Dyer, an independent, I was going to say international guys, an independent financial advisor and the president and CEO of Triumph Capital, a financial services firm. Ginella Massa, a City TV reporter and the first journalist to wear a hijab while anchoring a major Canadian newscast. And Sara, Koonar, the co-founder of Platform Media and Management, a boutique agency that works with social media influencers. Ladies, thanks so much for joining us. Let's jump right into the questions. So, a study by tech company Dell says 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't even been invented yet. So when you guys were thinking about, when you were teens or young adults, and you were thinking about what you wanted to be when you grew up, did you have any idea that this is what it would be?
No, an influencer manager?
That's probably a question for you, because social media exists in this way.
No, but it's funny because I feel like I kind of knew. I wanted to I went to school for journalism. I wanted to be a magazine editor. But I also wanted to own a modeling agency. And I guess it's kind of like editorial, modeling combined. So It's almost like I knew, but I didn't know how it was going to pan out, and it did. So it's cool.
It's pretty amazing. What about you guys?
No, I didn't either. I always was very entrepreneurial, so I kind of had a feeling I would end up doing my own thing and running my own business. But no, I did not know it would be in finance.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't land in one of those like doctor, teacher, lawyer,
those buckets.
And so being a journalist or being in broadcast was kind of a little bit out of the box. So I didn't really know like what that path looked like or what it would take to get there.
Right. So when we were asking our How I Made It participants to describe the exact moment when they knew that their career path was going to work out, a lot of women struggled to answer, or like they weren't sure if they had made it. Why do you think that is?
I think it's such a, business is such an unpredictable thing, and there are no guarantees in business, right? So I think it's really difficult for all of us to, basically stop working as hard as we are and to have that moment where we're like, yes, I've made it and this is it and I've done it. You don't have that because you don't know what's going to change from each moment to the next. So it's hard to know that.
Yeah, I think it's always in hindsight when you're reflecting. I mean, now, I do speaking engagements, people ask me to talk about my journey, and it's only when I start to reflect and I start to think about these tent poles in my career and what brought me to this, that I start going oh, maybe that was the moment, maybe this was the turning point. In that moment, it's hard to see it because you're still living it.
Yes.
But when you reflect back, it's easier to kind of start to think about okay, these were the things that kind of,
and you don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah, and you don't know, and you're still on that journey for many of us, right?
Yeah, you're still on the journey. Yeah. You still keep resetting your goals. So you made it to one point, then you're like, well, now I need to make it to the next point. So you never really feel like I made it now, I'm done. Right. But I think this whole project was kind of crazy because when you guys published the landing page for this, I was getting all these emails, and I kind of felt in that moment did I just make it? Everyone's congratulating me.
When your Twitter feed is going crazy, is that when you made it?
People are congratulating me, so I guess I made it.
That's hilarious. Okay, so everybody has opinions on how to be successful. Not all of it helpful. What is some of the really bad career advice that you guys have received?
I was told that you should be mean to PR people in my first.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I know it sounds weird. It was weird career advice, but I was doing an editorial internship, and the woman told me to be mean because then they'll kind of
respect
you more,
or be afraid of you.
Yeah, and or be afraid of you or respect you or be intimidated and like get the work done for you faster. Right. And I'm like, that's just never the way I'm gonna go.
Right. I really hate that. Like I see a lot of that, and that's never been my personality. And like especially in news, like a lot of people are like cynical and just like really like skeptical about stuff. And I'm somebody who's like very optimistic, and I have like I want to see the best in people, and sometimes I feel like I don't fit in this career because of that. Right. But I've also felt like sometimes you get more flies with honey, and I found I can still get what I want without having to be mean or to be like, can I say bitchy?
You can totally say bitchy. Yeah. I think for me, like probably the advice I hear most often is that I would be a lot happier if I quit my job and went to go work for like a large institution or bank. I would have more stability and
So we took to the streets of Toronto to ask real women the exact same question. Here's what they had to say.
I guess the worst advice I've been given was to kind of do the norm and to kind of be like everyone else.
The worst career advice that I've gotten is to be selfish.
I should straighten my hair. Yes. So I could look more like Beyonce.
Oh, if you like work really hard and like suffer for a couple years, then you like things will be chill, and that's not always the case. So yeah, that's probably like the worst.
Being aggressive tends to work for some individuals, but it didn't work for me being a woman, and I feel like it was more a natural progression just to build the networks and see what those networks get me through my career.
In terms of just the type of roles that you're taking on, I found that people, my parents' generation, older generation, they say, you need to get a full-time job with benefits, you need to be stable as a woman. And you know what? You have to take risks, and that's the thing I found. If it's contract, it doesn't really matter. Opportunities can present themselves in any form, so I think you just got to be really open and, jump at anything that comes at you.
That's
so oh, sorry, go ahead.
True what she was saying that not take on a full-time job. Like I quit a full-time job and people were like, are you crazy? What are you doing? You have benefits, whatever. And especially now in the gig economy, like it's a lot of freelance, part-time contract. And for me to be able to steer my career in the direction that I wanted to go, I needed to be able to take on those opportunities. And I couldn't because I was locked into a full-time job that wasn't taking me where I wanted to go.
Right. So have you received terrible career advice? Please tell us in the comments. And remember, one lucky commenter will get an opportunity to sit down with one of the 100+ women that we featured in How I Made It. So on the flip side of the terrible career advice, what about good career advice?
I think...
Go.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for me, it was different because for me, a lot of the challenges in my career was about, getting into an industry where people didn't look like me and managing hires and news directors taking a risk if they did. And so the advice that I was given was to not let it be the elephant in the room and to be the one to bring it up and address it, especially because hiring managers would be reluctant to, because they wouldn't be allowed to maybe necessarily talk about it. And so to be open and transparent and to say, look, I understand that maybe you've never hired somebody who looks like me, I know it might be a risk, and open the door to that conversation to make them feel comfortable, like this is something that we can talk about and be open and transparent about.
Yeah, taking risks. When I decided to quit my job and start platform media, my family was so supportive, and they were like, yeah, now's the time to take a risk. And I was like, what? I didn't know how to take it. But because, I'm single and I'm young and I don't have a family, and it's kind of the time now to do something.
Right.
I mean, you can do it at any time, but I felt like it was the right time for me. And so that was great to have their support and say, yeah, quit your job, take a risk. It was something that was very unexpected.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I have pretty conservative parents, so it was interesting that they were like, yeah,
totally
do it. Yeah.
So speaking of sort of taking these risks and building careers that you really want, what does a successful career look like to you? Diana, do you want to?
Yeah, I think success it's a lot of things, but I think primarily setting goals and targets and working your ass off to meet those. And then once you've come to a certain point, having the freedom to create amazing things and to be able to bring those things to market and to show them to the world and, develop and create things that can help people and can better basically the world, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, success is, looking forward to going to work every day. And for me, part of why I look forward to work every day is because every day is different for me, and it's not, and that's what I need, right? To be able to be happy and to feel like I'm learning and I'm growing. Is that every day I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So for me, that's a success.
Yeah, exciting, and being enthusiastic about what you're doing. I feel successful even if I'm not making millions of dollars, because I'm doing something I love, and I feel like my skill set is being totally used, and I'm totally satisfied. And I think that for me feels like I'm successful, no matter like what I'm making or how big our company is.
Totally. And I think passion is really tied into that. And I think if you can get up every day and work with your passion, there's nothing better than that.
Okay, we're going to come back to that money question though. So to anyone who is just tuning in, this is a panel discussion about millennial women and work, and it's with some of the women that we featured in Flair's How I Made It project, and we're about to talk money. So for a lot of people, one major indicator of success is salary. But when we asked our How I Made It participants how they felt about their income, if they made a fair income, it was a question that made people uncomfortable. So what do you think about salary transparency?
Yeah, well, the whole thing is people don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're not paid equally.
And I think that's just it, right? It's like, it's a touchy subject. You don't talk about it. So they asked me, is your salary fair? And I'm like, I guess it's fair. I don't know what my colleagues are making.
That's the thing.
I kind of know. And also the industry has changed in media. A lot of the big name anchors, aren't there anymore. Partially because they were making such inflated salaries, right? So, I think when I first started in the industry, no, I wasn't making enough. I'm also learning how to negotiate, and that's something that women struggle with a lot. Is like, here's the offer, and you go, okay, and you just take it, thanks, right? So that's something I'm still learning and still trying to figure out: is this fair? What's my worth? And being able to demand that and say.
I think that conversation is very important, and working with people and their finances every day, you come across it a lot, especially with women, and that whole conversation about stepping up and demanding to know what our perceived worth is, and negotiating promotions and talking about raises. These conversations simply don't happen enough, and I think a lot of women shy away from these subjects because, I don't really know why, but I think it's a confidence thing, and it's a whole slew of other issues, but they're really, really important.
I think maybe sometimes we feel like we're asking too much, or we want to be liked, and we think that we're going to be difficult
and we have to get over that.
By saying, well, I think I should be paid more.
No,
or,
you have to step up to the plate and have the conversation, because they can be life-changing.
And that's the thing, right? That's
Step up to the plate.
Once you kind of do it and you get a positive response, like, okay, that's fair.
That
and you're like, oh my God, I can ask, and it can actually happen.
And you're more likely to do it again.
You're more likely to positive reinforcement.
Totally.
So we asked our real women on the street the same question. Here's what they had to say.
I think it's depending on the path that the female takes to get to that level. But generally there is some, men do advance faster than females do in the profession. So in that sense, it can kind of come back down to, the type of job and the way that pay grade is, essentially. So
in my industry, yes, because we all work off of commission, share rental, that kind of thing. So there's not a lot of discrepancy between stylists. It's more experience level.
I think it's all based on experience, to be honest.
I think women do have to work a lot harder in order to prove themselves, and having to do that continuously is hard.
Everything starts from management, from top bottom. It's a trickle-down effect. So if everybody at the top does agree that, then maybe we can try and practice that for the people all the way down to the company, and I think that's best. I also think that apart from women speaking up, because I know lots of us do that, but I think it's the men who need to basically open their eyes and see that even women have a lifestyle for which they need equal income, and they're doing the same work, to be very honest. In fact, I also like to believe, well, this may be the feminist side of me, but I do believe that women do work harder as well. We put in everything, so it's only fair. We're not asking for more, we're just asking for equal. So I think it's all about the men being able to see our perspective as well.
What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's always on us to be asking all the time to be paid more.
Yeah.
It should be like when we're hired, if you were to hire the male candidate or the female candidate, you're giving them the same offer.
Exactly.
In my experience, it wasn't often male, female. It was also like age and experience.
For sure.
But my only issue was if I had more responsibilities, but my colleague, but they'd been in the industry longer, they would get a bigger salary despite that I was putting in more work.
Right.
So that was the only sort of like,
Well, sometimes that's the measure of success, is that you move up, you do less,
and you do
get
less.
more, right?
I think too, promotion is where a lot of women like maybe are a bit gun shy, in that it's not about working harder or doing more, but it's the way we promote ourselves, to not be afraid to go out there and say, listen, I'm doing this great job and it's probably better than all of these people. Promote me. Why aren't you? I think we're afraid to do that. We don't want to ruffle feathers, and I think that's another thing that has to.
And sometimes we are taking on the work without the title. For
sure.
Right? I'm doing the work of this thing, of this
all the
person,
time.
but I don't have the title or the salary.
Right.
So sometimes it's demanding that.
You have to get more comfortable.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about salary? Do you make enough for your work? Do you think in your field men are out earning women? Let us know in the comments for a chance to win an hour of mentorship with one of our How I Made It honorees. So for a lot of millennial women, though, the way to make a fair income is a side hustle. So what do you guys think? Do you think they're helping, hurting?
Sometimes, a side hustle can be positive if it's a passion project, or it can be something that is eventually going to be the main thing. Yeah. So I think in that sense, it's always a good way to kind of transition into maybe doing your own thing and being able to have that just be on its own. I think it's hard, these days. A lot of people are taking on, like we talked about, freelance contracts. So we don't have those full-time jobs in the way that we did before.
Right. I think if it's detracting away from your day-to-day, and you've got something on the side for extra money, and maybe it's not a passion project, it can be detrimental. But if you're creating something great and you want to bring it to market, and it's eventually something that it's sort of like a feeder, then I think it's good.
Yeah, sometimes what you do doesn't fulfill every part of you. So if you have a really business sales minded job and you're not doing much creative things, and maybe you do have a blog on the side, and just to fulfill that part of you, so you feel like all your skills are being used. So in that way, I totally think that's a great idea.
But if you're doing a side hustle because your job is not paying you enough, then
then
it has to go
let
back
them
to our
know.
old
Right.
conversation.
Stop that. Ask for more.
Got to rethink everything.
Got you. So that does bring us to the question of work-life balance, though. So is it possible, and is it even something that women want, do you think?
I think it's something that everybody wants. I know it's something that's always been difficult for me to work towards. I think, as high-performing women, we have a tendency to want to do everything, be everywhere, be everyone, and you realize very quickly that's just not reality. And so balance is something that helps you live.
I think it's really important, play hard, work hard, play hard, right? So, being able to enjoy that downtime, and also when we talk about relationships and things like that, being able to find partners who are going to be able to understand your work, your schedule, how much you take on, and being able to support you in that. Often I think a lot of strong women or independent women have hard times with relationships, and being able to find people who are going to really appreciate and value that and not resent it, and feel like this is an important part of you that needs to be fulfilled as well, and being able to support that.
Totally. Yeah, sometimes in owning your own business, you almost feel guilty, taking time or going on holiday because everything sort of revolves around you. So I have that problem where I'm it would be nice to take a day off and do this, but people are going to be like, "What are you doing?" So that's that's my own issue that I have to sort of deal with, and allow myself to have time to be like, don't feel guilty about going for a massage.
And that's very
you deserve
difficult,
it.
by the way, to find that, because when you are running your own thing, your own operation, every single second of the day, and you can't explain it to somebody who's not, they don't get it. Every hour of the day, every minute of the day, you're doing something, you're thinking about something. So it's very tough to give yourself permission to shut it off for a while and disconnect. But it's
even
it's
taking sick days sometimes, right? To be like, I'm going to completely just shut off or detach and just stay at home and be sick, right?
It's very tough.
It's hard sometimes.
Don't check that email.
Put
your phone down. So when it comes to millennials at work, there's stereotypes. Before we talk about them, though, let's take a look at what our women on the street had to say.
The worst stereotype would have to be that we're lazy and that we're entitled, that we just think that we deserve things.
Lazy and that we're entitled.
Lazy.
Lazy.
We are not lazy. Lazy and entitled? No. Nuh-uh. Like, all of us have like a million jobs. We can't do one thing. We don't go to school, or like our other generations didn't even go to school and they have like high-paying jobs right out of high school, and like we're all struggling. I know people with multiple degrees who are still working low-income jobs.
Maybe the worst thing I've heard is that we're kind of all about ourselves and don't really care about other people.
When really I think we have to work harder to make it further because everything's more expensive now.
Millennials, I think if that's how people perceive us, then it's our job to also have to try harder to make people appreciate our work more.
But I think that we're the dreamers and that we're going to be the ones to get things done.
Worst stereotype about millennials at work that you have heard? Let us know in the comments for a chance to win an hour of mentorship with one of our How I Made It honorees. So
there's a theme.
There was a theme. Like our women on the street, actually, though, at least half, if not more, of our respondents said that being lazy and entitled was the #1 stereotype that they had heard. Why do you think this myth is so enduring?
I think that a lot of the older generations don't realize, first of all, how expensive education is in this for our generation. Tuition fees are the highest that they're like 10. They've I forgot the stat, but it's very high. It's gone way more than the rate of inflation, right? And so in those days, people 10, 20 years ago, people were able to work a summer job and be able to make enough to pay for that year's tuition. Now we're not able to do that. You have to go to school. You have to have a job on the side, and we're the most educated and the most underpaid, at least employed, rather. Yeah. So I think that often they hear it as like complaining, that like, well, in my day I worked really hard and pull up your bootstraps and get it done, right? Yeah. But I think there's also the reality of the way that things have changed.
I think on that note, it does go back to past generations, and I think the way millennials today, the way we do business, the way we communicate with each other, certainly with technology, everything is so different as compared to generations past. Right. And so I think a lot of those stereotypes just simply come from an inability of people from those generations to connect with us and to understand us, basically. So they just label us.
I mean, I think maybe you can talk about this, but like the idea of like social media being a job, right? And there are lots of millennials who want to get rich off of YouTube, want to get rich off of Instagram,
but like so do
right?
We all do.
And there's this idea that that's a quick or easy route. I'm sure you know that social media influencers work really hard.
Yeah. They do work really hard, and I think the difference with like the people who do this full time than just your friends who like have a lot of followers because they take a lot of selfies. It's different. My influencers are, concepting out like almost editorials like you would at a magazine, and their blogs are so thoughtful and well written, and so those are the people that we're working with, and those are the people that are really making bank. And I think everyone just kind of gets put into one sort of bubble of like influencers, but we call them storytellers because they're really out there telling stories every day. And when I interned at magazines, the amount of stories that people are putting out in digital publications, like every single day than they used to in like one monthly, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Absolutely.
But they're writing an entire blog post and a beautiful photo series every single day. That's a lot of work that goes into that. And I know.
Yeah, I mean, the workload now is different. Before, if for a reporter, you'd file one story a day, you'd work towards a 6 o'clock deadline, you'd have the whole day to work on that. Now, I'm expected to write something for the website as soon as possible, do something for radio, and have something for, be tweeting all day or taking photos and posting them on Instagram. So it's not just my job is, triple than what it was traditionally.
Absolutely.
Right?
And keeping in mind, too, that for a long time you didn't necessarily have to have a post-secondary education to be successful.
That's right.
So your point about being so educated is a great one, because we're putting in this work and we're doing what we think we need to do to be successful, but it's not always paying off in the way that it's not coming as easily maybe to us as it did for previous generations. So let's also now move on to our audience questions. If you haven't left a comment, there's still time. And you obviously should, because one commenter will win an hour of mentorship with one of our How I Made It honorees. So I'm going to my phone to find these questions. Have you ever felt that a male coworker or superior was holding you back in your career? That's from Maureen. Thanks, Maureen.
I think, I was a young woman when I started in finance on the independent side, and I worked with primarily all men, and they were all 60 plus. And so I don't know that there was a case where they were necessarily holding me back, but I do think that I was certainly the butt of many jokes, and she's not going to go anywhere, and nothing's going to happen here. And so you kind of get used to hearing that, and you really have to develop a thick skin in that way.
Yeah. In my industry, essentially, in my newsroom, it's actually a lot of women.
Yeah.
So we outnumber the men, but some of the men are in the more powerful
management positions, right?
So I haven't really had anything kind of
happen that's
super obvious.
Yeah, I think people just always, because I always looked younger, they would just assume I didn't know things and be like, oh, you don't know anything about that. Don't worry, you don't have to listen to that. And I'd be like, yeah, I know a lot about it. But like they'd be like, yeah, it's okay, you don't need to speak on that. Right. And so it's like, because I looked young, they just assumed I didn't know what I was talking about.
Right.
So it's more so that, but I've been lucky to work with a lot of supportive males, but that was sort of the one thing that I would find. It's like, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I want to. More about like being young and inexperienced as opposed to being a woman.
Right. So our next question is from Megan. Some people say you should never say no to any opportunity. Other people say you should be selective. What do you recommend?
I personally like to be selective. I think it just depends on your line of work maybe and your preference, but yes, I think being selective can be a good thing.
I think it depends on where you are in your career.
Right.
If you are very early on starting out, you kind of sometimes don't have an option to be picky. I think, but there does come a time where you have to, as we talked about, knowing your own worth and knowing where you need to expend your energy and actually focus on and think about, is this going to actually bring me anything good, or am I just
You're just doing it
just because?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree with you.
Amazing. Okay, so what is your take on overtime? This is from Christina, by the way. Necessary evil to get ahead or avoidable?
Are you being paid for this overtime?
What a good question.
That's the question. Are you being paid for this overtime? Are you getting time in lieu? Is this overtime, like, what is this overtime going to mean? And is it being recognized? I think that's maybe the question. And like, is it something that's going to become expected of you to do regularly without compensation? Because you don't want to become that person where it becomes expected of you. You're the one who gets to tell people how to treat you by agreeing or allowing certain things to happen. So when you set that expectation as the person who always stays late and doesn't mind whatever, then guess what? You will always continue to stay late, and you'll expect it.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything?
No, it's also a negotiating tool. I mean, if you are staying late all the time, then maybe you shouldn't be, paid that salary. You should be paid another salary. So I would, exactly, approach them and let them know.
What do you do for self-care? This is from Sara.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I watch a lot of trashy reality TV.
What's your favorites? Tell us.
Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Catfish. I watch a lot of Catfish is my favorite. Yeah. I watch also a lot of Chopped.
Yes.
A lot of the cooking, like MasterChef.
Fair.
So that's
Bachelor.
And like everything.
I was going to say, we are friends with Bachelor here, so.
That's not my top, but I can understand.
Yeah, it's a lot of Bachelor. Yeah, sometimes when we're doing a lot all day long, and I want like a brain break.
Yeah.
So I just watch something that requires
completely mindless.
And that is Bachelor. Yeah. It doesn't. It's just laughing.
Just giving them a rest. It's not killing them. They're taking a break.
You just need to.
What about you, Diana?
I same thing. Like anything trashy or mindless definitely helps. I also like exercise. I like meditation. I like to do all kinds of things.
Bike riding. That's like the one thing that actually is like very calming and relaxing to me. In terms of exercise, it's like the only.
Wait, like bike riding on the street with the
outside?
cars?
No, not like
in the middle of traffic.
Not in traffic. Like leisurely, like on the waterfront trail.
I like that.
Like sweating it out, or like going to a boxing class or going to a spin class, and just being like. It's like all that frustration that's built up throughout the day. You just get it out, you sweat it out, and then you come out of there and you're like, all right.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah,
I can handle this.
Okay, so this one is from Jen. How do you deal with the temptation to compare your success or accomplishments to another woman's?
That's very difficult. I think the comparing is really a tricky thing. I think if you're successful, because you constantly want to be bettering yourself, and so you naturally will look at other successful people and think, oh, I should have done this like this, or I should, maybe be more like that. But at the end of the day, authenticity always wins, I think. And so maybe like taking little pieces of things that you like from like styles or other things, that's totally fine. But yeah, I think it's a tough one to avoid.
Yeah, I think it can be really tempting, but I try and focus really hard on like being on my own journey and figuring out like what's best for me. And if I do see somebody who I'm like, oh, I wish they had that, I kind of try and frame it as what you're saying, like, okay, what did they do to achieve this? How can I learn from what they've done to do that myself, as opposed to it being like envy or competition. I really don't like being in competition with people in my workplace. I don't think that that's productive. I think that, but maybe it's a way to learn from each other and think, oh, how have they done something that like I can learn from and I can do better at?
Yeah. It's inspiration, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the next one is, I've heard people say that millennials aren't as loyal to their employers as people from other generations. What's your take on that? And that's from Nana.
Interesting.
I think that that's a little bit true in the sense that we have itchy feet and we want to grow and we want to learn and we want to feel like we're constantly, on to the next thing. So yeah, if we're in a job where we are not growing and we aren't given those opportunities, we are going to move on. And we don't feel like, oh, I'm going to stay here for 20 years and like build my career in that sense. So, and maybe that's important for employers to understand that that's why millennials leave.
And I think also the fact that there are very, pensions don't exist today. The entire landscape is different. We don't have incentive to be locked into a job for 5 to 10 years. So
when you look at big corporations like Apple or Google, they have these amazing offices and all. That's job retention. They don't want to lose their employees to somebody else because they know that this is a true thing about millennials. So I think it's sort of looking at how to retain those employees, but it is I think it's true.
Okay. So I think this is our last one. It's from Ashani. I'm a new grad. How do I break into my industry and get myself out there aside from LinkedIn?
I would say obviously social media.
Social
Sara
media.
knows.
Networks, like other friends, any relationships that you've got that can help you. Those
building
are
networks really is one of the best ways, because often it's not what you know, it's who you know, or letting people know that you're looking for work. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. If you hear about any opportunities, people want to hire people that they know or people who have some connection as opposed to a complete stranger.
Absolutely.
So building those networks, I know it can be really hard when you maybe don't have any to begin with. I had that experience and having to build your own networks, but I think that that's probably the number one.
And putting yourself out there, go to events, go to functions, meet new people, and just start spreading the word.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in and for asking such amazing questions. So we'll be sending a DM on Facebook to the winner of our contest tomorrow, so look out for that. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming in and chatting with us, for your amazing insights. And everyone, be sure to check out the entire How I Made It project at flair.com/howimadeit for more inspiring success stories and career real talk. Thanks.